Hello, Margaret Coleman here with Soul Astrology. The chart for the new moon in Aquarius shows two groups of planets, one in Aquarius, one in Pisces. In Aquarius, we have the sun and moon, of course, but also Mercury has just passed over Pluto. So the last few days would have had an intensity about them. Now, I'm speaking this before I get there, so I can't tell you what the intensity is going to be about, but by the time you hear this, you'll know. The way the chart is drawn, Mercury looks as though it's at the end of the trine, the blue line, but actually, if you look at the numbers of degrees, Pluto's at nearly 2 degrees, and Mercury is at 2 degrees, 2.25. So that line is actually directed towards the sun and moon, which leaves Mercury and Pluto unaspected. They're not directly aspecting anything else in the chart. The feeling could be somewhat alone, like each one having to deal with their own stuff. The energy of what's going on somehow being internalized, an intensity of thought, ideas of the end of the human race and that sort of thing, death and destruction, which is what Pluto does focus on, the death and destruction of that which is anti-life, anti-growth. So this sort of thinking could be a backdrop to the rest of the month. It's as though one is trapped in thoughts that seem inevitable, out of control of it, which of course we are out of control of it. When faced with huge challenge, what do we do? What do you do? How do we feel? What attitude? And what attitude is going to work to move forward? In Aquarius, one can throw up one's hands and walk away. Well, there's nothing I can do, so it can be a kind of giving up. Those who are bent on survival at all costs might go into frantic action, different actions here and there, sudden activity, a great idea and then losing it again. The difficulty with being involved when it comes to Aquarius is that if one gets too close, one can no longer see what's actually happening. One has no perspective on it. Aquarius stands back in order to see more clearly. Standing back, away from the news, one might say, whatever is on the social media, is probably the best attitude. Not taking sides and avoiding allowing oneself to be over-influenced by pressure or other people's emotion. And yet it's not the same as giving up. The involvement could be said to be interested to see what happens, curious to know how things will pan out, and maintaining a good contact with one's own personal values while remaining available in case one is really needed. The new moon itself has that lovely trine to Jupiter, 9 degrees, nearly 10 degrees, the new moon, and Jupiter retrograde, but 11.5 degrees, very close to being an exact trine. smooth flow of energy between the two ends. And this is indicating perhaps that from the heart there will spring many ideas. And the best thing to do with that is to communicate. It's asking questions, it's listening to the answers, it's allowing movement in the mind. Aquarius, it's a fixed sign, and so there is a tendency to have made up one's mind already and reject ideas that don't fit in with what one has already decided. Jupiter being in Gemini brings a beautiful flexibility in. This is where communication, as long as it is not emotionally funded, brings inspired ideas as to how one might go forward. The square that Jupiter has been making to Saturn is quiet at the moment. It's retrograding away from the square, while Saturn is now going forwards. In a way, there is a respite there in terms of those ideas that one might have. There's room to expand on them, to think what you would like, to plan how it could be, and what maybe you will do when the energy is moving forwards. The square to Saturn, when it arises, tends to indicate difficulty in actually manifesting. And when Jupiter squares Saturn, it's as though our good ideas hardly get off the ground before they are crushed. So this is a good time for thinking big, imagining what one might do in the event, whatever the event is. Perhaps looking at some long-term goals on a personal level. Being sure that those goals do actually fit in to communities, to the needs of the group, whichever group you're part of. What Saturn is actually involved in this month is a trine to Mars, who is retrograding into the trine, so we still have it to come. Where the energy of Mars at the moment in Cancer, very much about nurture, taking care of, feeling for, the empathic, finds ways through the Saturn of actually supporting. A few days back, Venus went across the Saturn, reminding us of the enormous effectiveness of love, how the care of everyone flows from the centre where we are connected, the centre which we really are. Saturn being all our individual representations of that centre, and the love flowing out, the same for everyone. Venus is pretty much on Neptune, just a couple of degrees to go, absolutely involved in shifting out of the individual human love, which is the pull between possessiveness and romance, and a lot of things in between, but very individual. Moving from that into the love of all people, just love, the love of animals and things and life itself. Because, of course, Neptune dissolves divisions, so that there are none. And Neptune has just passed the North Node. Neptune is so close to the North Node, I'd say it was on it. And it remains on it for some time as it's going to and fro, making its way into Aries. And the North Node gradually going backwards, but so slowly. With Venus approaching, it's emphasizing the spiritual love, the energy of love, perhaps I could say, which acts when action is appropriate and expresses compassion even when nothing can be done. Mars in this chart is square Chiron in Aries, which suggests there is perhaps a dilemma between taking care of one's self and one's own and taking care for humanity. Neptune on the North Node makes it clear what humanity is supposed to be doing, taking care of the whole of it, the whole of life, the whole of our connection to the earth. But there is still the need for us to be individuals. I know I've said this several times before, but while we're making our way into Aquarius, this is the main thrust of our growth, to be individual and yet know that we are not divided, not separate. It's a beautiful paradox, and it looks as if we're doing a bit of flip-flopping between the two sides of it this month. Uranus connects to both ends of the trine. Being in Taurus, it could be about the earth, how to make sure everyone is fed, and yet managing to rewild the bits that aren't essential for food. With the North Node in Pisces, the South Node is in Virgo. So for the next 18 months, we are called to use the skills of Virgo to assist that sense of oneness. It's taking care in a practical way, and it's very much about the actual production of food, promoting health, so that we have the energy and fitness to do the necessary work. It's the soil itself, Virgo, the crumbly bits of soil, the way it is, and bringing health to the soil. By the full moon, we can see in the chart that Mars has retrograded further into Cancer and is now really trining the Saturn. By the 12th of February, perhaps we will be able to go ahead and do things that work, and if not actually carry out our planned actions, at seeing at least how they might be manifested in a way that works. Maybe more importantly, it is the shouldering of a responsibility, that the energy of nurture, we are responsible for feeding the whole of humanity. We need to remember that humanity is our family, and not just the group we're in, big or small. It looks as though the Earth will have had a say in the discussion by then, as both the Sun and Moon are at right angles to it. It's making a very clear T-square there. Mercury is with the Sun. The Aquarian views are what will be expressed, while the Moon connecting to Chiron is perhaps emphasizing the importance of being individual not just for the sake of being individual, but for the energy that each individual can put in. When we allow ourselves to express the character we each have our own unique energy to bring to a situation. And there's a joy in that. The difference between us making a much wider capacity to affect things in a positive way. Whatever the Earth has to say through Uranus, I feel that we will know how to be with that. There is such a positivity in Leo. As long as we keep a measure of personal consciousness and don't get washed away by it, by someone else having that energy. This is where each person being in charge of themselves is so important. Know your own values and don't give them up just to fit in with a flow of energy. Venus has moved into Aries at that point, which can be relating through activity. People pulling together, focusing perhaps on what needs to be done. The power of that action shown by the sextile to Pluto, emphasizing the need to be focused where we are, accepting what is as we go along, because the background is shifting and changing regardless. And the world is always a better place if we allow the joy of it all. The simple joy in breath, breathing, the food we eat, the fact that we can sleep when we lie down, life itself, there's always beauty. We need to remember that's what we're looking at, that it's the eye of the beholder that determines where the beauty is to be found. The light walks among you always. You may see it as light beings or rays, or people you know and love still on earth with you. Or you may see it in the gestures of sweetness that scatter light from a smile or a touch. Laughter, rainbows, birdsong. Recognize light wherever you may, and know that your seeing is possible because light is in you